The blood on Wade York's knuckles had barely dried when he saw her standing in the middle of Main Street, looking like she had just walked out of a painting and into the dusty chaos of White Pine, Montana territory. It was late summer in 1876, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small mining town nestled in the mountains. Wade had just finished breaking up a fight between two drunks outside the general store. His massive frame and reputation as the toughest man in these parts usually enough to settle disputes before they escalated. At 6 feet 4 inches of solid muscle, with dark hair that brushed his shoulders and a beard he kept trimmed close, Wade was the kind of man people stepped aside for. He had spent the last 8 years living in the mountains, trapping and hunting, only coming into town when he needed supplies or when trouble required his particular set of skills. But the woman standing there, clutching a worn leather bag and looking around with wide eyes, made him forget about the blood on his hands and the ache in his shoulders. She was perhaps 22 or 23, with auburn hair pinned up under a simple bonnet and a traveling dress that had seen better days. What struck him most was the determined set of her jaw, even as uncertainty flickered across her delicate features. Wade found himself walking toward her before he could think better of it. As he approached, he noticed the way the other men in town were starting to take notice of her too, and something protective surged in his chest. "You look lost," he said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. He was not used to talking to women, especially ones who looked like they belonged in a fancy parlor rather than a rough Montana mining town. She turned to him, and he saw her eyes were green, the color of pine needles in summer. For a moment, she looked startled by his size, but then she straightened her spine and met his gaze directly. "I am looking for the schoolhouse," she said. Her voice was clear and educated, with a slight tremor that suggested she was not as confident as she was trying to appear. "I was told it would be near the church, but I seem to have gotten turned around." "You are the new schoolteacher?" Wade asked, surprised. The last teacher had left 6 months ago, unable to handle the rough conditions and rowdy children. The town had been searching for a replacement ever since. "I am. Amelia Walsh. I arrived on the stage this afternoon." She held out her hand in a formal gesture that seemed almost comical in the dusty street. Wade looked down at his own hand, still marked with blood, and wiped it quickly on his pants before taking hers. Her hand was small and soft in his rough palm, and he was suddenly acutely aware of how massive and uncivilized he must seem to her. "Wade York," he said, "I will show you to the schoolhouse. It is just up this way." He picked up her bag before she could protest, noting how light it was. She had not brought much with her to this new life. As they walked, he was conscious of the curious stares from the townspeople. It was not often they saw Wade York walking through town with a proper lady. "Have you been in White Pine long, Mr. York?" Amelia asked, clearly trying to make polite conversation. "Long enough," he said, then realized how curt that sounded. He was out of practice with social niceties. "I live up in the mountains mostly, come down when needed. You are a trapper, among other things." The schoolhouse was a simple wooden building that also served as the church on Sundays. Beside it was a small cabin that would serve as Amelia's home. Wade set her bag down on the porch and pulled out the key the mayor had given him that morning. He had been asked to check on the place, make sure it was ready for the new teacher's arrival. He had done so reluctantly, not expecting to be the one showing her around. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean. One room with a bed, a small stove, a table and 2 chairs, and a shelf for storing supplies. A door led to a tiny room with a basin for washing. It was basic accommodation, but Wade knew it was better than what many people in town had. Amelia walked inside and looked around, and Wade saw her shoulders slump just slightly. She had probably been hoping for more, coming all this way. "It is not much," he said, feeling the need to apologize even though it was not his responsibility. "It is fine," she said quickly, putting on a bright smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "I am grateful to have it. Back in Philadelphia, I was sharing a room with 3 other women at the boarding house. This will be my own space, which is something I have not had in a long time." Philadelphia. That explained the refined way she spoke and carried herself. Wade wondered what could drive a woman from a civilized city like that to a rough mining town in Montana territory, but it was not his place to ask. "The general store is back down the street," he said. "Marshall Garrett's office is next to it if you need anything. Dr. Fletcher lives above his practice, 2 buildings past the store." "Thank you, Mr. York. You have been very kind." Kind was not a word most people associated with him, but he just nodded. "Welcome to White Pine, Miss Walsh." He left before he could do something foolish like offer to bring her dinner or check on her later. She was the schoolteacher, a respectable woman, and he was a mountain man who was more comfortable with animals than people. Their paths had crossed for a moment, and now they would go back to their separate worlds. Except Wade found himself thinking about her green eyes as he made the long trek back up to his cabin in the mountains. He thought about the way she had tried to hide her disappointment with the accommodations, putting on a brave face. He thought about how small her hand had felt in his, and how something in his chest had tightened when she smiled at him. He told himself to forget about her. But 3 days later, when he heard the howling of wolves coming from the direction of town, he was heading down the mountain trail before he could second-guess himself. The sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Wade moved quickly through the forest, his rifle in hand, following the sound of the howls. They were close to town, too close. Wolves usually stayed deeper in the mountains, but a harsh winter last year had disrupted their normal patterns, and they had been bolder than usual in their search for food. As he got closer, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A woman's scream. Wade started running, his powerful legs carrying him swiftly through the underbrush. He burst into a clearing just beyond the edge of town and saw Amelia backed up against a tree, her skirts torn, holding a stick in front of her like a weapon. Circling her were 3 wolves, their teeth bared, moving with the calculated patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to go. He did not have a clear shot without risking hitting Amelia. Without thinking, Wade let out a roar that echoed through the forest and charged forward. The wolves turned toward him, startled by the sudden threat. 2 of them broke and ran, their instincts telling them that this massive human was more than they wanted to handle. But the 3rd wolf, larger and clearly the alpha, stood its ground. It launched itself at Wade with a snarl. Wade dropped his rifle and met the wolf head-on. They collided in a tangle of fur and muscle, and Wade wrapped his arms around the animal's body, using his weight and strength to bear it to the ground. The wolf snapped at his face and neck, its hot breath rank in his nostrils. Wade felt claws raking across his shoulder, tearing through his shirt and into his flesh, but he held on. He had wrestled bears and mountain lions, had fought men twice as mean and half as honorable as any beast. He knew how to use his size and strength, knew where to put pressure to control an opponent. The wolf was strong and fast, but Wade was stronger. He managed to get his arm around the creature's throat and squeezed, using his other hand to control its snapping jaws. The wolf thrashed and fought, but Wade held on, his muscles straining with the effort. He did not want to kill the animal if he could avoid it. It was just doing what wolves do, trying to survive. But he would not let it hurt Amelia. Finally, After what felt like an eternity but was probably less than a minute, the wolf went limp. Wade had cut off its air just enough to make it lose consciousness without killing it. He released it immediately and stumbled back, his chest heaving with exertion. The wolf lay still for a moment, then stirred and scrambled to its feet. It looked at Wade with what might have been respect or confusion, then turned and loped off into the forest to join its pack. Wade stood there, breathing hard, blood running down his shoulder from the claw marks. Then he remembered Amelia and spun around. She was still pressed against the tree, her face pale as snow, the stick fallen from her hands. Her whole body was shaking, and as their eyes met, her legs seemed to give out beneath her. Wade caught her before she hit the ground, his large hands gentle despite their roughness. "Easy now," he said softly. "You are safe. They are gone." Amelia looked up at him with those green eyes, now wide with shock and something like awe. "You fought a wolf," she whispered, "with your bare hands. You could have been killed." "Could not get a clear shot," Wade said, as if what he had just done was perfectly reasonable. "Can you stand?" She nodded, but when he tried to help her to her feet, her legs wobbled again. Without hesitating, Wade scooped her up into his arms as easily as if she weighed nothing. She gasped and instinctively put her arms around his neck. "What were you doing out here?" Wade asked as he carried her back toward town. His voice came out harsher than he intended, fear and adrenaline making him sound angry. "I was gathering wildflowers for the classroom," Amelia said, her voice small. "I did not realize I had wandered so far from town. The sun was still up when I started. I heard the wolves and ran, but they were faster. If you had not come—" She started shaking harder and Wade adjusted his hold on her, pulling her closer against his chest. "I did come. You are safe now." They walked in silence for a moment. Wade could feel her heartbeat against his chest, rapid like a bird's wing. His own shoulder throbbed where the wolf had clawed him, and he knew he was bleeding onto her dress, but he did not want to put her down until they were back in town proper. "I have never seen anyone do anything like that," Amelia said quietly. "You are the strongest man I have ever encountered." Wade did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But he was aware of every place their bodies touched, of the way she fit perfectly in his arms, of how the setting sun caught in her auburn hair. When they reached her cabin, he finally set her down, making sure she was steady on her feet before he let go. His hands lingered at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "You are hurt," Amelia said, noticing the blood for the first time. Her face, which had started to regain some color, went pale again. "Your shoulder. We need to get you to the doctor." "It is nothing," Wade said. "Scratches." "Those are not scratches, Mr. York. Please, let me at least clean them. It is the least I can do after you saved my life." Wade wanted to refuse, wanted to head back to his cabin in the mountains and pretend this had never happened. But the pleading look in her eyes made him nod instead. Inside her cabin, Amelia lit a lamp and heated water on the stove. She had Wade sit at the table and carefully helped him remove his torn shirt. When she saw the extent of the wounds, she gasped. "These need stitches," she said. "I have had worse. Just clean them and I will be fine." Amelia looked like she wanted to argue, but instead she got to work. Her hands were gentle as she cleaned the wounds with warm water and soap. Wade sat still, watching her face as she concentrated on her task. She bit her lower lip when she was focused, he noticed. A small crease appeared between her eyebrows. "Why did you come looking for me?" Amelia asked softly as she worked. "Did someone send you?" "Heard the wolves," Wade said. "Knew they were too close to town, then I heard you scream. But you could not have known it was me screaming." "No. But someone needed help, so I came." Amelia looked up at him and something in her expression shifted. "You are a good man, Wade York." No one had called him that in a long time. Wade had lived alone for so long, had become someone the townspeople called on when they needed muscle or tracking skills, but not someone they invited to dinner or considered a friend. He was useful, respected in a way, but always kept at arm's length. "I am just a man," he said. "A man who wrestles wolves with his bare hands to save people he barely knows," Amelia said. She finished cleaning his wounds and began wrapping them with clean cloth. "I think that makes you rather extraordinary." When she was done, she stepped back, and Wade immediately missed the warmth of her hands on his skin. He stood up, suddenly feeling too large for the small cabin, too rough and uncivilized to be in this space that belonged to this refined, educated woman. "Thank you," he said gruffly, "for tending to this." "Thank you for saving my life," Amelia replied. She walked to a chest in the corner and pulled out a folded shirt. "This belonged to my father. He passed away 2 years ago. I think it would fit you better than that torn one." Wade took the shirt, their fingers brushing in the exchange. It was soft cotton, finer than anything he owned. "I cannot take this. Please. I would like you to have it. I have been carrying it around, not sure what to do with it. I think my father would have liked knowing it went to someone like you." The way she said it, with such sincerity in her eyes, made it impossible to refuse. Wade pulled the shirt on. It was a bit snug across his broad shoulders, but it fit well enough. "I should go," he said, though he found himself reluctant to leave. "Will you come back?" Amelia asked, then seemed embarrassed by her own forwardness. "I mean, to check that the wounds are healing properly. I would feel terrible if they became infected because I did not treat them well enough." Wade knew he should say no. Should head back to his mountain and stay there, away from this woman who made him feel things he had not felt in years, maybe ever. But instead, he found himself nodding. "I will come by in a few days." The smile that lit up Amelia's face made his chest feel tight again. He left quickly, before he could say or do something foolish. Over the next 2 weeks, Wade found excuses to come into town more often than he had in the previous 2 months combined. He told himself it was to check on the wolf situation, to make sure the pack had moved on and was not still threatening the townspeople. He told himself it was practical, that he needed to stock up on supplies anyway, but he knew the truth. He came to see Amelia. At first, he just stopped by her cabin to let her check his wounds, which were healing well despite his initial dismissal of them. Then he started timing his visits to town for when school let out, just to catch a glimpse of her leading the children in their lessons, or sending them off with homework and encouragement. One afternoon, he arrived to find her struggling to move a heavy box of books that had been delivered to the schoolhouse. Without a word, he picked it up and carried it inside for her. "You are becoming my personal knight in shining armor," Amelia said with a smile as she directed him where to put the box. "Just happened to be passing by," Wade said, which was a lie. He had made the 2-hour trek down from his cabin specifically to check on her. "Well, I am grateful nonetheless. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." Wade knew he should decline, should maintain some distance, but he found himself accepting. They sat at the table in the schoolhouse, and Amelia told him about the children she was teaching, about the challenges of managing students who ranged from 6 to 15 years old, all in one room. She talked about the books she was trying to get them excited about, the arithmetic lessons that some of them struggled with. "Young Tommy Harris has a real gift for mathematics," she said enthusiastically. "I have never seen a child grasp concepts so quickly. But his father wants him to work in the mine, does not see the point in education. It breaks my heart." Wade found himself drawn into her passion for teaching, for making a difference in these children's lives. He told her stories about the mountains, about tracking animals and reading signs in nature. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. "You could teach the children about all of that," Amelia said suddenly. "About surviving in the wilderness, tracking, how to read the weather and the signs of animals. It would be invaluable knowledge for children growing up in this territory." "I am not a teacher," Wade said, uncomfortable with the idea. "You have knowledge worth sharing. That makes you a teacher, whether you have a formal title or not." The idea unsettled him, but also intrigued him. He had never thought of himself as having anything worthwhile to offer in that way. As autumn crept into the mountains, Wade found himself becoming more and more entangled in Amelia's world. He started stopping by the schoolhouse once a week to demonstrate tracking techniques or show the children animal pelts and explain how to identify different creatures. The children were fascinated, and Wade discovered that he actually enjoyed teaching them. But more than that, he enjoyed being near Amelia. He loved watching her face light up when she got excited about a lesson plan, loved the sound of her laugh when one of the children said something precocious. He loved the way she always had a kind word for everyone, even the roughest miners who would stop by to pick up their children. He was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. One evening in late September, Wade was walking Amelia back to her cabin after a school social. The whole town had turned out for the event, which Amelia had organized to help raise money for new books and supplies. She had been glowing all evening, happy to see the community come together. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said as they walked the short distance to her cabin. The air had turned crisp with the approach of autumn, and she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I know social events are not your favorite thing." It was not so bad, Wade admitted. In truth, he would have endured far worse just to see her smile. They reached her porch and Amelia turned to face him. In the moonlight she looked almost ethereal and Wade's breath caught in his throat. "Wade," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you spend so much time alone in the mountains? Why not live in town, be part of the community here?" Wade was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "I grew up in Missouri on a farm, had a family, a normal life. When the war came, I joined up, fought for the Union, saw and did things that changed me. When I came back, I could not settle back into that life. The noise, the people, the pretending everything was normal when I felt anything but. I headed west, ended up in these mountains and found peace in the solitude. The quiet lets me think, lets me be who I am now without having to explain or justify it." Amelia reached out and took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his large, calloused ones. "Thank you for telling me that, and thank you for letting me into your world at least a little bit." "Why did you leave Philadelphia?" Wade asked. It was something he had wondered about for months now. It must have been hard to leave everything familiar behind. Amelia's expression clouded slightly. "I was engaged to be married, a respectable man from a good family. He was charming and said all the right things. I thought I loved him, or at least I convinced myself I did. Then I discovered he was courting another woman at the same time, someone with a larger dowry. When I confronted him, he made it clear that my feelings did not matter, that marriage was a business arrangement and I should not be so sentimental about it." Her voice had grown thick with emotion, and Wade squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her to continue. "I realized that if I stayed, I would end up married to someone like him, or worse. I would spend my life in drawing rooms, making small talk, never being able to use my mind or pursue my passion for teaching. So I applied for teaching positions in the frontier territories. When White Pine offered me the job, I took everything I had saved and bought a ticket west. I did not tell anyone until the day before I left." "That took courage," Wade said, "or foolishness. Amelia said with a small smile. Some days I am not sure which. Courage, Wade said firmly. You left everything you knew to build a life on your own terms. That is brave. You make me feel brave, Amelia said softly. She stepped closer to him, and Wade could smell the lavender soap she used, could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. When I am with you, I feel like I can handle anything this wild frontier throws at me. Wade knew he should step back, should maintain the proper distance between them. But instead, he reached up with his free hand and gently cupped her face. His hand, so large and rough from years of hard living, cradled her cheek like she was made of the finest porcelain, infinitely precious and delicate. Amelia, he said, her name a whisper on his lips. I am not good at pretty words. I am rough and I am scarred, and I have done things I am not proud of. But you have become the reason I find myself coming down from that mountain. You have become the thing I think about when I am alone in my cabin. You have become everything to me. Tears shimmered in Amelia's eyes, catching the moonlight. I love you, Wade York. I think I have loved you since the moment you fought that wolf to save me, but it is more than that. I love the gentleness in you that you try to hide. I love how patient you are with the children. I love the way you see the world. I love you. Wade had faced down wild animals, had survived battles and harsh winters and the loneliness of isolation. But nothing had ever made him feel as vulnerable as hearing those words from her, and nothing had ever made him feel as strong. He leaned down and kissed her, and it was like coming home after a long journey. Her lips were soft against his, and she made a small sound of happiness and melted into him. His arms came around her, holding her close, protective and possessive and infinitely gentle all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Amelia smiled up at him. What happens now? Now I court you properly, Wade said, if you will have me. I will have you any way I can get you, Amelia said, making him laugh. Your reputation, Miss Walsh. What would the townspeople say? I find I care less about what people say than I used to. Living out here has taught me that. Wade kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. I will build you a house, he said, a proper one with glass windows and a real fireplace. Somewhere between town and my cabin so you can still teach but we can have privacy. We, Amelia asked, hope shining in her eyes, if you will marry me. I know I should wait, should court you longer, but I am not a patient man when it comes to things I want. And I want you, Amelia Walsh. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to hear about your students and tell you about my day. I want to build a life with you. Yes, Amelia said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes to all of it. Yes to you. They stood on her porch, holding each other under the Montana stars, and Wade felt something he had not felt since before the war. Peace. Not the peace of solitude, but the peace of being truly known by another person and loved anyway. The engagement caused quite a stir in White Pine. The refined schoolteacher and the mountain man seemed like an unlikely match to some, but anyone who saw them together could not deny the love between them. Wade became a more frequent presence in town, though he still made trips up to his mountain cabin to check his trap lines and maintain his property. They were married in late October, in a simple ceremony at the schoolhouse. Marshall Garrett stood up as Wade's witness, and Amelia had befriended the doctor's wife, Mrs. Fletcher, who served as hers. The whole town turned out for the wedding, and Wade found himself surprisingly moved by the outpouring of good wishes. True to his word, Wade built them a house. He chose a spot about 3 miles from town, nestled in a valley with a view of the mountains. It was close enough that Amelia could easily make the journey to the schoolhouse each day, but far enough to give them the privacy and connection to nature that Wade needed. He worked on the house through the late autumn and early winter, with help from some of the men in town. It was larger than the cabin they had both been living in separately, with 2 bedrooms, a spacious main room with a stone fireplace, and even a small room that Amelia could use as a study for preparing her lessons. They moved in just before Christmas, and Amelia cried when she saw the finished house. Wade had carved their initials into the wooden beam above the door, W-Y and A-Y, intertwined forever. Their first winter together was one of the happiest times of Wade's life. When school was in session, they would wake early, have breakfast together, and Wade would drive Amelia into town in the wagon he had bought. He would spend the day hunting or working on improvements to their property, then come back to pick her up in the afternoon. On weekends and school holidays, Amelia would accompany Wade into the mountains. He taught her to track animals, to read the signs of weather changes, to move quietly through the forest. She was a quick learner and fearless in a way that constantly surprised him. She could handle a rifle well enough to defend herself, though she preferred observation to hunting. In turn, Amelia continued to expand Wade's world. She read to him in the evenings from the books she ordered from back east. They would discuss philosophy and politics and literature by the fire, and Wade found that he loved the exercise of his mind as much as his body. She taught him to see the world through different eyes. One evening in early spring, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Amelia took Wade's hand and placed it on her abdomen. "There is something I need to tell you," she said, her eyes shining with joy and a touch of nervousness. Wade's heart started racing. "Are you?" "I am with child," Amelia said. "We are going to have a baby." Wade pulled her into his arms, overcome with emotion. A baby. A family. Things he had never imagined for himself, not after the war, not after all the years alone. But now, with Amelia, everything seemed possible. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Amelia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Wade said. He kissed her deeply, pouring all of his feelings into it. The pregnancy was not easy. Morning sickness kept Amelia home from school for several weeks, and Wade worried constantly. He brought her tea and crackers, held her hair when she was sick, and generally tried to be as helpful as a man who had no experience with pregnant women could be. Mrs. Fletcher, the doctor's wife who had become Amelia's close friend, was a godsend. She checked on Amelia regularly, answering Wade's worried questions with patient good humor. "She is doing fine, Wade," Mrs. Fletcher said after one such visit. "Pregnancy is uncomfortable, but Amelia is healthy and strong. The baby is growing well." As summer approached and Amelia's belly grew round with their child, Wade found himself overwhelmed with love and terror in equal measure. What if something went wrong? What if he was not a good father? What if he could not protect them? Amelia, sensing his fears, took his hand one evening and placed it on her stomach. As if on cue, the baby kicked and Wade felt it against his palm. "Feel that," Amelia said softly. "That is our child, strong and healthy just like their father. Everything is going to be fine." "How do you know?" Wade asked. "Because we have each other," Amelia said simply. "And because I have you. The man who fought a wolf with his bare hands to save me. The man who holds me like I am made of porcelain. The strongest, gentlest man I have ever known. Our child is lucky to have you as a father." Wade kissed her then, slow and sweet and full of promise. The baby came in early October, exactly 1 year after their wedding. It was a long labor that lasted through the night, and Wade paced outside the bedroom door like a caged animal while Dr. Fletcher and Mrs. Fletcher attended to Amelia. When he finally heard the cry of a baby, Wade burst through the door despite Mrs. Fletcher's protests. Amelia was propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted but smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. "It is a boy," she said, her voice tired but full of joy. "We have a son." Wade approached the bed slowly. This man who had faced down every danger the frontier could throw at him, suddenly terrified of this tiny infant. But when Amelia placed the baby in his arms, something inside him shifted and settled. The baby was small and red-faced, with a shock of dark hair. He looked up at Wade with unfocused eyes, and Wade felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," Wade said softly. His large hands cradled his son with infinite gentleness, the same way he had once cradled Amelia's face that night on her porch. "I am your father. I am going to keep you safe, always." "What should we name him?" Amelia asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Wade knew. "William," he said. "After my father, William York." "William," Amelia repeated, trying it out. "Billy, I love it." Dr. Fletcher cleared his throat. "I will leave you three alone, but call if you need anything. Mrs. Fletcher and I will be downstairs." After they left, Wade carefully settled onto the bed next to Amelia, still holding Billy. They sat there together, the three of them, watching the sunrise through the window. "We made this," Wade said in wonder. "This perfect little person." "We did," Amelia agreed. She leaned her head on Wade's shoulder and he felt the weight of her trust, her love, her faith in him. "Thank you," Wade said. "For what?" "For loving me. For giving me this. For making me believe I could have a family, a real home." "You gave me the same thing," Amelia said. "A home. Not just a house, but a real home with love and safety and acceptance. You saved me, Wade, not just from those wolves, but from a life that would have crushed my spirit." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son sleep. Outside, the world was waking up, but inside their bedroom in that moment, everything was perfect. The next few months were a blur of sleepless nights and steep learning curves. Wade, who could track a deer for miles and survive weeks in the wilderness with nothing but a knife and his wits, found himself completely undone by this tiny human who needed him so completely. But he took to fatherhood with the same determination he brought to everything else. He learned to change diapers and warm bottles. He walked the floor with Billy in the middle of the night when the baby was fussy, his deep voice singing old songs his own mother had taught him. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving animals into the headboard. Amelia watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. This fierce, strong man who could be so gentle, so patient, so full of love. She returned to teaching when Billy was 3 months old, bringing him with her to school. The children were enchanted with the baby, and the older girls would help watch him during lessons. It worked well enough, though Amelia knew it would become more challenging as Billy got older and more mobile. That winter was harder than the previous one. The snow came early and heavy, and there were several weeks when they could not make it into town at all. But Wade had prepared well, stocking the house with plenty of food and firewood. They spent those weeks huddled together as a family, and Wade found he did not miss his solitary winters at all. Billy was walking by the time the next spring came around, toddling around their house and getting into everything. Wade baby-proofed as best he could, moving anything dangerous out of reach and keeping a constant eye on his adventurous son. One afternoon in May, Wade was outside chopping wood while Amelia prepared dinner and Billy napped. He heard Amelia scream and dropped the axe, racing toward the house with his heart in his throat. He burst through the door to find Amelia standing frozen, pointing at the corner of the room. There, coiled up on the floor, was a rattlesnake. Wade assessed the situation in an instant. Billy's cradle was on the other side of the room, too close to the snake. Amelia was between Wade and the snake, also too close. "Do not move," Wade said quietly. "Either of you, stay completely still." He moved slowly, carefully, circling around to approach the snake from behind. The rattlesnake's attention was fixed on Amelia, its rattle buzzing a warning. Wade knew one wrong move could cause it to strike. In one fluid motion, Wade grabbed the snake just behind its head with one hand and its body with the other. The snake writhed and coiled around his arm, but his grip was firm. He carried it outside and far from the house before releasing it into the woods. When he came back inside, Amelia was sitting on the floor, shaking. Billy had woken from his nap and was crying. Wade picked up his son, soothing him, then helped Amelia to her feet. "You are safe," he said. "Both of you are safe." "How do you do that?" Amelia asked, her voice still shaky. "How are you so calm in the face of danger?" "Years of practice," Wade said. "And knowing that I have to be calm, have to be strong, because you two depend on me. I will always keep you safe, Amelia. You and Billy, that is my promise." That night, after Billy was asleep and they were lying in bed together, Amelia rolled over to face Wade. "I want another baby," she said. Wade blinked in surprise. "Another one. I want Billy to have siblings. I want our house full of children and noise and life. I was an only child and it was lonely sometimes. I want more for our children." Wade thought about it. The idea of more children, of a house full of life and laughter, appealed to him more than he would have expected. "Then we will have more," he said, pulling her close. "As many as you want." Their second child, a daughter they named Emma, was born the following spring. She had Amelia's auburn hair and Wade's strong features, and from the moment she arrived, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. 2 years later came another son, Thomas, and then 2 years after that, a daughter named Grace. Their house, which had once seemed so spacious, felt perfectly full with 4 children running around. Wade expanded the house, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. He built a barn for the animals they had acquired over the years. Their property became a real homestead, with chickens and a cow and a vegetable garden that Amelia tended with help from the children. Amelia eventually stopped teaching at the school when Grace was born, feeling that she needed to focus on their growing family. But she did not stop teaching entirely. She homeschooled their own children and opened their home to other children in the area who wanted extra help with their studies. Wade divided his time between providing for his family and being present with them. He still hunted and trapped, but now he took the boys with him, teaching them the skills his own father had taught him. He showed them how to track animals, how to read the weather, how to survive in the wilderness. Emma and Grace learned those skills too. Wade believed that all his children should know how to take care of themselves, regardless of gender. Amelia agreed wholeheartedly, and their daughters grew up knowing how to shoot, track, and survive alongside their brothers. As the years passed, White Pine grew from a rough mining town into a more established community. The territory of Montana became a state in 1889, and Wade and Amelia voted in their first state elections together. Their children grew. Billy became tall and strong like his father, with the same protective instincts. Emma was fierce and independent, with her mother's intelligence and her father's courage. Thomas was quieter, more contemplative, with a love of books that rivaled Amelia's. Grace was the baby, spoiled by everyone, but with a kind heart that made it impossible to stay mad at her. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Wade took Amelia up into the mountains to the spot where he had first kissed her. It was autumn again, the leaves turning gold and red, the air crisp with the promise of winter. "Do you ever regret it?" Wade asked as they sat on a blanket, looking out over the valley. "Leaving Philadelphia, marrying a rough mountain man instead of someone refined. Amelia laughed and took his face in her hands, the gesture mirroring the way he had once held her face that night on her porch. "Not for a single second," she said. "You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know I needed. You gave me love and safety and a partnership that makes me stronger. You gave me our children. You gave me a life of adventure and purpose and joy. How could I ever regret that?" "I love you," Wade said. "More now than even that first night when I told you. I did not know it was possible to love someone more over time, but with you, every day I fall deeper." "I love you too," Amelia said. "My mountain man. My love." Wade kissed her then, and it was like the first time and like coming home and like a promise of forever all at once. They stayed up there until sunset, talking and laughing and simply being together. When they finally returned home, their children were waiting, having prepared a surprise anniversary dinner with help from Mrs. Fletcher. That night, with his family around him, Wade looked at the life he had built and felt a gratitude so deep it made his chest ache. He had come to Montana territory running from his past, seeking solitude and peace. What he had found instead was love, purpose, and a family that made every day worth living. Billy, now 15 and almost as tall as his father, caught Wade's eye and smiled. Emma, 13, was helping Grace with her food while simultaneously arguing some point with Thomas. The noise and chaos and love filled every corner of their home. Amelia reached over and squeezed Wade's hand, and when he looked at her, he saw his whole world reflected in her eyes. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges as they always do. There were hard winters and crop failures, illnesses and injuries, the normal struggles of life. But through it all, Wade and Amelia faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each passing year. When Billy turned 18, he announced his intention to become a lawman like Marshall Garrett, who had become like an uncle to the York children. Wade was proud, though he worried about the dangers his son would face. But he had raised Billy to be strong and smart and brave, and he trusted him to make his own way in the world. Emma shocked everyone by deciding she wanted to be a doctor. It was an unusual path for a woman, but Wade and Amelia encouraged her dreams. They helped her apply to medical schools back east, using what money they had saved and taking out loans for the rest. "You can be anything you want to be," Wade told his daughter. "Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. You are a York, and we do not give up." Thomas took over much of the work on the homestead, having no desire to leave Montana. He loved the land the way Wade did, understood the rhythm of the seasons and the language of nature. Wade knew the property would be in good hands with Thomas. Grace, the youngest, was still finding her way. At 16, she talked about becoming a teacher like her mother once was, or maybe a writer, documenting the stories of the frontier. One evening, when the children were all occupied with their own activities, Wade took Amelia out to the porch where they often sat together. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "You remember the first time I brought you out here?" Wade asked. "This land was just forest and meadow then. I remember thinking it was the most beautiful place I had ever seen," Amelia said. "And that you were going to build us a life here, and I believed you completely." "I would do it all over again," Wade said. "Every moment, every choice, everything that led me to you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade into night. After all these years together, they did not always need words. They could communicate volumes with a look, a touch, a shared smile. "Wade," Amelia said after a while, "do you ever think about that wolf? The one you fought that first day?" Wade smiled. "Sometimes. I think that wolf brought us together. If I had not heard you scream that day, if I had not come down from my cabin, we might never have really known each other." "Fate," Amelia said. "Maybe. Or maybe just luck. Either way, I am grateful." "You held my face so gently that night," Amelia remembered. "Like I was made of porcelain. I fell in love with you in that moment. This big, strong man who had just wrestled a wolf with his bare hands, touching me like I was the most precious thing in the world." "You are," Wade said simply. "You always have been." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Wade thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a farm boy in Missouri to a soldier in a brutal war to a lonely mountain man seeking peace in isolation. And then to this. A husband, a father, a man who had built a life worth living. He had been broken once, had thought himself too damaged for love or family or happiness. But Amelia had seen something in him worth saving, worth loving. She had given him a chance to be whole again, to build something lasting and good. The next morning, Wade woke early as he always did. He slipped out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Amelia, and went outside to start his daily chores. The morning air was cool and fresh, and the mountains rose majestically in the distance. As he worked, he heard the sounds of his family waking up. Thomas came out to help with the animals. Grace started breakfast. Emma was already at the table, studying medical texts she had borrowed from Dr. Fletcher. Billy rode up on horseback, having stayed overnight in town at the marshal's office where he was apprenticing. Amelia emerged from the house, her hair still loose around her shoulders, and smiled when she saw him. After all these years, that smile still made his heart skip a beat. "Good morning," she called. "Morning," Wade replied, walking over to kiss her. "Papa," Grace called from the doorway. "Breakfast is ready." They all gathered around the large table Wade had built years ago, a table that had hosted countless meals and conversations and arguments and celebrations. Wade looked around at his family, at the life he had built with Amelia, and felt that same sense of gratitude and peace that had become his constant companion. After breakfast, when the children had dispersed to their various activities, Wade and Amelia took a walk around their property. It was something they tried to do most days, a chance to be alone together and talk without interruption. "Emma got a letter yesterday," Amelia said. "From a medical school in Chicago. They want to interview her." "That is wonderful," Wade said, meaning it even though the thought of his daughter so far away made his chest tight. "She is scared," Amelia continued. "Scared of leaving, scared of failing, scared of being so far from home." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that being scared is not a reason not to do something. That sometimes the things that scare us most are the things most worth doing." Wade smiled. "Wise words." "I learned from the best," Amelia said, squeezing his hand. "You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it." They walked in silence for a while, enjoying the morning and each other's company. Wade thought about how far they had come from that day when he first saw her standing in the street in White Pine, looking lost and determined at the same time. "I have been thinking," Amelia said. "When the children are all grown and on their own paths, maybe we should travel. See some of the world beyond Montana." "Where would you want to go?" Wade asked, intrigued by the idea. "Back to Philadelphia to see if it is as I remember. To San Francisco to see the ocean. Maybe even back east to visit Emma once she is settled in medical school." "I would go anywhere with you," Wade said. "As long as we are together, the place does not matter." That autumn, Emma left for Chicago. The whole family accompanied her to the train station in the larger town of Helena, about 60 miles away. Wade held his daughter close before she boarded, this fierce, brilliant girl who had inherited so much from both her parents. "You are going to do amazing things," he told her. "I am so proud of you." Emma hugged him tightly. I learned everything important from you and Mama. How to be brave, how to work hard, how to care for people. Thank you, Papa. Wade watched the train pull away, carrying his daughter toward her future, and felt the bittersweet pang of letting go. But he also felt pride, knowing that he and Amelia had raised children who were confident enough to chase their dreams. Billy received his commission as a deputy marshal the following spring, assigned to help keep law and order in several small towns in the region. He visited often, bringing stories of his adventures that made Wade both proud and anxious. Thomas married a local girl, Sarah, and brought her to live on the homestead. He built a house on the far side of the property, and he and Sarah started their own family. Wade was delighted to become a grandfather, and he doted on his grandson, James, teaching him the same skills he had taught his own children. Grace, true to her inclination, began writing articles for newspapers in Helena and even some publications back east, documenting life in Montana and the changing frontier. Her descriptions of the landscape and the people who inhabited it were vivid and compelling. As Wade approached his 50th birthday, he realized that his life had turned out far differently than he ever could have imagined. The lonely, damaged man who had fled to the mountains seeking solitude had become the center of a large, loving family. One winter evening, when it was just Wade and Amelia alone by the fire, she asked him a question. If you could go back and tell that young soldier who came home from the war what his life would become, what would you say? Wade thought about it carefully. I would tell him that the darkness does not last forever, that he will find peace and love and purpose, that he will build something good from the ruins, that he will meet a woman who will save him in all the ways that matter. You saved yourself, Amelia said. No, Wade said firmly. You saved me. You saw something worth loving when I could not see it myself. You gave me a reason to come down from that mountain, a reason to live fully instead of just existing. We saved each other, Amelia said. I was running from a life that would have crushed me. You gave me freedom, adventure, love, and partnership. We made a life together that neither of us could have made alone. Wade pulled her close, and they sat together in the firelight, wrapped in blankets and memories and the deep comfort of two people who know each other completely. The years continued their steady march. Billy became a U.S. Marshal, following in the footsteps of Marshal Garrett, who retired and spent his final years regaling the grandchildren with stories of the old days. Emma graduated from medical school and opened a practice in Helena, where she became known as one of the best doctors in Montana. Thomas and Sarah had 3 more children, filling the homestead with the sound of young voices. Grace published a book about life on the Montana frontier that became popular back east. Wade and Amelia watched it all with pride and satisfaction. They took their travel adventures, spending a month in San Francisco, where Wade saw the ocean for the first time and declared it magnificent. They visited Emma in Helena regularly and took a trip back to Philadelphia, where Amelia showed Wade the places of her childhood. But they always came back to Montana, to their home in the mountains, to the land that had given them so much. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children organized a celebration that brought together everyone from miles around. The house and property were filled with family and friends, with food and music and laughter. Wade stood with Amelia, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and the community they had been part of for so long, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Marshal Garrett, now in his 70s but still sharp as ever, made a toast. To Wade and Amelia York, he said, raising his glass. 30 years ago, Wade brought a scared young woman into town after saving her from wolves. I remember thinking they made an unlikely pair. But I have watched them build a life together that is a testament to what love, commitment, and partnership can achieve. They have raised remarkable children, built a thriving homestead, and made this community better by being part of it. To Wade and Amelia, everyone echoed the toast, and Wade felt Amelia's hand slip into his, her fingers interlacing with his as naturally as breathing. Later, when the celebration was winding down and the sun was setting, Wade and Amelia snuck away to their favorite spot on the property, a small rise that overlooked the valley. 30 years, Amelia said, shaking her head in wonder. It has gone so fast. And yet I remember every moment, Wade said. The first time I saw you, the night I fought the wolf, the moment you told me you loved me, our wedding day, the birth of each of our children, all of it is crystal clear. We have had a good life, Amelia said. The best life, Wade corrected. Better than I ever deserved. You deserve everything good, Amelia said firmly. You are the best man I have ever known, strong and gentle, fierce and kind. You have been the perfect partner, father, and friend. Wade turned to face her fully. The years had added lines to her face and silver to her hair, but to him, she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her. More beautiful, actually, because now she carried the history of their life together in every feature. I love you, Amelia York, he said. I have loved you for 30 years, and I will love you for whatever time we have left, and beyond that if such a thing is possible. I love you too, Amelia said. My mountain man, my love, my home. They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Wade thought about the young man he had been, broken and alone, seeking peace in isolation. He thought about the moment he had heard Amelia scream and had run toward danger instead of away from it. He thought about wrestling that wolf with his bare hands and then cradling her face like it was made of porcelain. That was the moment his life had truly begun. Everything before had been preparation, and everything after had been the payoff for taking a chance on love. Their house was still full of family and friends, and as they walked inside together, they were greeted with warmth and laughter and the chaos of people who cared about them. Wade put his arm around Amelia's shoulders and pulled her close, and she leaned into him with the ease of 3 decades of partnership. In the years that followed, Wade and Amelia settled into the comfortable rhythm of long married couples. They worked together on the homestead, helped with their growing number of grandchildren, and enjoyed the peace that came from a life well lived. They took walks in the mountains, sat on their porch in the evenings, and fell asleep each night in each other's arms. Wade's body started to show the wear of years of hard living. His joints ached in cold weather, and he moved a little slower than he used to. But his mind remained sharp, and his love for Amelia never dimmed. Amelia developed problems with her vision as she got older, and Wade would read to her every evening, his deep voice bringing the stories to life. It was a reversal of their early years together when she had read to him, and there was something sweetly circular about it. On Wade's 60th birthday, Thomas asked him what it felt like to have lived 6 decades. It feels like I have been blessed beyond measure, Wade said honestly. I have seen and done things I never imagined. I have loved and been loved. I have children and grandchildren who make me proud. I have land and a home, but most of all I have your mother, and that makes everything else possible. As Wade approached his mid-60s, he knew his time was growing shorter. His body was wearing out, though his spirit remained strong. He had made peace with this reality, felt ready for whatever came next, but he worried about leaving Amelia, about her being alone. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before, he voiced this concern. "Promise me you will be okay," he said. When I am gone, promise me you will keep living, keep finding joy." Amelia was quiet for a long moment. "I will promise to try," she said. "But do not ask me to be the same without you. You are part of me, Wade. When you go, part of me will go with you." "I would take it all back if I could," Wade said. "The meeting, the love, everything, just so you would not have to feel that pain." "Do not you dare," Amelia said fiercely. "I would rather have a lifetime of love and loss than a lifetime of safety without you." We knew when we started this journey that it would end someday, but the journey was worth it. Every single moment was worth it. Wade pulled her close, and they sat in silence as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. Wade York passed away peacefully in his sleep on a cold winter night, just a few months after his 66th birthday. He went to bed beside Amelia as he had done for 35 years, kissed her good night, and told her he loved her. In the morning, she woke to find him still and cold beside her, his face peaceful, his suffering over. The funeral was attended by more people than could fit in the church. Wade had touched many lives over the decades, had helped countless people, had been a pillar of the community despite his preference for solitude. Billy gave the eulogy, speaking of his father's strength, kindness, and unwavering love for his family. But it was Emma who told the story everyone remembered, about the mountain man who had wrestled a wolf with his bare hands, but had cradled her mother's face like it was made of porcelain. She spoke of the dichotomy that had defined Wade York, fierce and gentle, strong and tender, protective and nurturing. "My father taught me that true strength is not about violence or domination," Emma said. "It is about using your power to protect those who need protecting, to build rather than destroy, to love rather than fear. He was the strongest man I ever knew because he was not afraid to be gentle." Amelia did not speak at the funeral. She sat in the front pew, supported by her children, silent tears running down her face. After the service, she stood by Wade's grave as they lowered him into the Montana earth he had loved so much. The months after Wade's death were the hardest of Amelia's life. The house felt empty without his presence, even though her children visited constantly and Thomas and his family were right there on the property. She moved through her days mechanically, doing what needed to be done but without joy or purpose. But slowly, very slowly, she began to heal. She found comfort in her grandchildren, in the stories they wanted to hear about their grandfather. She took walks in the mountains that Wade had loved, feeling close to him there. She read the books they had shared, heard his voice in every word. One spring morning, almost a year after Wade's death, Amelia woke up and realized she was going to be okay. She would never stop missing him, would never stop loving him, but she was going to survive this. Wade would have wanted her to keep living, to keep finding moments of beauty and joy. She started helping Grace write a book about their life together, about the early days of White Pine and the building of the Montana Territory into a state. She spent time with Emma, learning about medicine and marveling at how far women had come. She watched with pride as Billy became one of the most respected marshals in Montana. She helped Thomas run the homestead and played with her grandchildren. And every evening, she sat on the porch and watched the sunset, and she talked to Wade. She told him about her day, about the children and grandchildren, about the changing world around them. She felt his presence in the mountains, in the wind, in the land they had built a life on together. Amelia York lived to the age of 82, surviving Wade by 16 years. She remained sharp and engaged until the very end, surrounded by a family that had grown to include great-grandchildren. When she finally passed, peacefully in her sleep like Wade had, her children buried her beside him on the hill overlooking their valley. On her headstone, below her name and dates, They inscribed the words Emma had used at Wade's funeral. She was loved like porcelain by a man who wrestled wolves. The homestead remained in the York family for generations, passed down through Thomas's line. The story of Wade and Amelia became part of family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The mountain man who had fought a wolf to save a schoolteacher, and the love that had grown from that fateful meeting. Their great-great-grandchildren would visit the graves on the hill and hear the stories of strength and gentleness, of courage and love, of two people who had found each other in the wild Montana territory and built a life that echoed through the decades. The house Wade had built still stood, expanded and updated, but with the original beam above the door still bearing the carved initials, W.Y. and A.Y., intertwined forever. Inside, photographs lined the walls, documenting the life Wade and Amelia had built together. Generations of York children grew up in that house, playing in the same mountains their ancestors had explored, learning the same lessons about strength and gentleness, courage and love. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew down from the mountains and the sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, the York family would gather on the porch that Wade had built, and someone would tell the story of how it all began. About a mountain man who wrestled a wolf with his bare hands but cradled a woman's face like it was made of porcelain. About love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. About Wade and Amelia York and the legacy they left behind.